It was 2 a.m., and the house was wrapped in silence, the kind that presses against your ears and makes every creak feel louder than it should. I was sitting cross-legged on the living room rug, the soft hum of the air conditioner brushing against my skin, when I heard her, my daughter-in-law, on the phone in the hallway. "Tomorrow we're taking her to—" Her voice floated down the corridor, the sentence trailing off like a knife twisting in my chest. I froze, holding my breath. My hands trembled slightly, brushing the edge of my silk blouse, the fabric smooth against my fingertips. My heart pounded, half out of fear, half out of a protective instinct I hadn't felt in years. Who was her? And why was this happening now? I glanced out the window at the moonlight pooling across the garden, the roses blooming quietly under the silver glow. Everything seemed ordinary, peaceful, but that voice, so casual, so certain, shattered it. I picked up my phone, checking the time again. 2:03 a.m. Nothing should be happening. I should be asleep. But I couldn't look away from the shadows of the hallway where she lingered, whispering plans that didn't include me. A lump formed in my throat. I had learned to live with silence, to hold my truths close, but this was different. I couldn't ignore it. And as I listened, a familiar mix of fear and defiance rose inside me. Tonight, I realized, the past I thought I'd buried wasn't done with me yet. I remember the first time I truly felt the weight of being underestimated. I was 22, fresh out of college, and full of dreams that seemed far too big for the small town I grew up in. My parents had always been supportive in theory, but the reality was different. They wanted me to settle, to take a safe job, marry someone respectable, and blend into the quiet life they had chosen for themselves. I had other plans. I wanted a life that sparkled beyond the ordinary, a life I had imagined in late-night sketches and whispered promises to myself. But when I told my family, the words were met with sharp glances and sighs. "Isabella, you don't know what you're getting into," my mother said, her voice tight with worry and disappointment. "Dreaming won't put food on the table." I felt my hands shake, clutching the edges of my notebook, as if holding onto something tangible could keep me steady. My heart pounded, a bitter lump forming in my throat. I wanted to scream, to tell them that my dreams were real, that I could make them happen, but I didn't. I swallowed the words and walked out of the room, the sting of rejection leaving a quiet fire in my chest. It was my grandmother who changed everything. She was sitting on the porch, knitting slowly, eyes sharp beneath the brim of her faded sun hat. She looked up at me and smiled. "Dreams are fragile, my dear, but stronger than fear," she said. Her hands rested on mine, warm and steady. "If you guard them, nurture them, they will take you places no one else can imagine. Don't wait for permission." Her words felt like a gift, a lifeline tossed to a drowning girl. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would leave the safety of familiar walls, of familiar doubts, and forge a path on my own. I would take the risk, face the struggle, and claim the life I wanted, even if it meant leaving everyone I loved behind in the shadows of my departure. By morning, I had begun planning. I found a small apartment in the city, started sending out resumes, and reached out to anyone who might believe in me. That decision, that tiny spark of rebellion and hope, became the foundation of everything I would build. City life was nothing like I had imagined, and everything I had feared. My small apartment smelled faintly of paint and dust, and the hum of traffic outside was relentless, reminding me that I was just another face in a sea of ambition. But for the first time, I felt alive in a way I never had at home. This was my world to conquer. My first few months were brutal. I juggled internships and odd jobs, often skipping meals, surviving on cheap coffee and sheer willpower. There were nights I sat at my tiny desk, eyes strained from staring at spreadsheets, fingers hovering over my laptop, questioning every choice I had made. Did I have what it took? Was I foolish to chase a dream that seemed so far out of reach? Then I met Evelyn Hartman, a seasoned editor at a small publishing house. She noticed the intensity in my writing, the careful way I observed the world, and she offered mentorship, without asking for anything in return. "You have fire," she told me one evening as we sipped lukewarm tea in a cramped office. "Don't let anyone dim it, especially yourself." Under Evelyn's guidance, I learned the nuances of storytelling, the art of negotiation, and the confidence to pitch ideas boldly. Slowly, the tide turned. My first article was accepted by a reputable magazine, then another. Each small win bolstered me, and I began saving every penny I could, investing not in luxuries but in my growth, courses, books, even a modest co-working space where I could expand my network. Yet I kept my successes hidden. Calls home were careful, vague. "I'm doing well," I'd say, avoiding specifics. I didn't want to hear doubts or unsolicited advice. My family had learned to see me as fragile, compliant, unremarkable, and I was determined to rewrite that narrative quietly. The first real turning point came when I secured a major freelance contract that allowed me to start my own consultancy. I rented a small office downtown, painted the walls a bold teal, and filled it with clean lines, inspirational quotes, and just one photograph of my grandmother smiling knowingly at me from her rocking chair. That image reminded me every day why I had chosen this path and why I would never turn back. I won over clients who initially underestimated me, proving that diligence and creativity could outweigh years of experience. The money grew, but more importantly, so did my sense of self. Each success reinforced my resolve. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Evenings in my apartment became moments of reflection. I would sit by the window, notebook in hand, jotting ideas, sketching the next project, savoring the quiet thrill of independence. The city lights twinkled like 1,000 possibilities, and for the first time, I realized that the life I had been denied was not only possible, it was mine. The knock on my office door was polite but deliberate. I glanced at the clock. 10 a.m., my peak hour for calls and client meetings. I had been expecting them. My mother, my father, and yes, my son's wife, Claire, but anticipation didn't make it any less nerve-wracking. They had no idea what awaited them inside. I opened the door and greeted them with a composed smile, my outfit crisp, my hair perfectly in place, every inch of me exuding calm confidence. Their eyes swept over the room, and I could feel the invisible weight of their assumptions pressing in. They expected a timid, overworked girl who had barely managed to scrape by. Instead, they stepped into a space that spoke of accomplishment and control. The walls were adorned with framed accolades, certificates, published articles, client commendations. My desk, large and immaculately organized, held a few personal touches, a sleek laptop, a small bonsai tree, and the photograph of my grandmother from years ago, smiling as if she had known I'd make it this far. The faint aroma of jasmine from a diffuser filled the room, softening the edge of authority I exuded. They didn't speak immediately. Their eyes darted, mouths slightly open, faces pale. Claire was the first to break the silence, her voice hesitant. Is this your office?" I smiled, letting the tension hang for a moment longer. "Yes," I said calmly, stepping aside to gesture at the space. "Welcome." They moved slowly, taking in the professional yet inviting environment. The furniture, the lighting, the carefully chosen decor, it all screamed independence and success. My father's lips pressed into a thin line. My mother's hands twisted nervously in front of her. Claire's fingers fidgeted with the strap of her handbag. I leaned against my desk, letting my presence fill the room. "I know you expected something different," I began, my voice steady. "I know you expected me to be struggling, maybe even needing help. But the truth is, I haven't just survived. I've built a life, a career, and a stability you never thought I could." I opened a drawer and pulled out a few glossy reports. "This is my company portfolio. These are my clients." And yes, I let a pause stretch, letting the weight sink in. I am financially independent. I own my business, my office, and everything I've worked for. Every step I took was without asking permission or seeking approval. Claire's eyes widened. You did all this? On your own?" I nodded. Every bit of it. The room went silent, except for the quiet hum of the air conditioner. Shock, disbelief, and a trace of shame washed across their faces. My parents' pride was buried under layers of astonishment, perhaps even regret. Claire's confidence wavered, replaced by a dawning respect that she hadn't expected to feel. I allowed myself a small, private smile. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the confrontation without confrontation, the revelation that spoke louder than any argument could. For the first time, they saw me as I had always wanted to be seen, strong, capable, unstoppable. After the initial shock wore off, I could feel the subtle shift in the room. The balance of power had tilted, and for the first time in years, it rested entirely with me. I could have relished their discomfort silently, letting guilt fester. But I wasn't interested in petty revenge. I wanted change, real, lasting change, for them and for myself. I leaned forward slightly, placing my hands on the edge of my desk. "I'm willing to help," I said, "but things need to be different from now on." My voice was calm, but every word carried weight. I looked at my parents first. "Mom, Dad, I need you to respect my choices, even when they differ from yours. I need honesty, not judgment. And I need you to support the people around you, rather than holding them back." My mother's lips pressed together. My father's shoulders slumped slightly. They understood this was non-negotiable. Then I turned to Claire. Her posture stiffened, a flicker of defensiveness in her eyes. "Claire, you will treat everyone you care about with integrity. That means no secrets, no manipulation, no undermining. If you want to be part of this family, you must approach it with respect and transparency. And yes, that includes me." I could see the weight of the conditions settling on her. Her mouth opened, then closed, as if she were swallowing a bitter pill. I let her feel it, let her internalize that power wasn't mine to give lightly. Finally, I addressed my son, Lucas. "Lucas, I love you, but love doesn't excuse laziness or entitlement. You need to take responsibility for your actions, your career, and your choices. Stop expecting handouts. Stop coasting on assumptions. It's time to grow up." I paused, letting each word land, watching their expressions shift from disbelief to contemplation. This wasn't about punishment, it was about accountability. Change required effort, not just apologies. Then I leaned back, softening slightly. "I'm not heartless. I'm willing to guide you, support you, and even invest in your growth, but only if you are willing to rise to the standards I set. Everyone in this room has potential, but potential means nothing without action." The room fell quiet again, but this time the tension was different. It was expectant, charged with possibility. I had set the rules, and now it was their turn to step up. And as I looked at them, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about me proving my worth, it was about creating a space where respect, integrity, and ambition could thrive. I was no longer asking for permission to exist. I was defining the terms on which I would allow others into my life. For the first time, I felt fully in control, not just of my career, not just of my success, but of my family, my relationships, and the energy I chose to invest in them. The power wasn't cruel. It was deliberate, fair, and rooted in a desire to cultivate better people, better connections, and a better life for all of us. Weeks passed, and the change I had demanded began to take root. My parents were still cautious, still adjusting to seeing me as a force rather than a fragile girl, but I could feel them listening differently now. They asked for advice instead of offering unsolicited instructions. Their words were lighter, tinged with pride instead of doubt. Claire surprised me the most. She started including me in decisions, consulting rather than assuming. She even apologized one evening, quietly, almost shyly. "I didn't realize. I didn't understand before," she said, eyes downcast. "I want to do better, for her, for Lucas, for all of us." Lucas, too, shifted. He took on more responsibility at work, began contributing ideas at home, and even suggested projects I had long wished for him to pursue. It wasn't perfect, growth rarely is, but it was real, and it was sustainable. I spent my evenings reflecting, walking through my apartment, running my fingers over the small bonsai that had stood by my desk since the beginning. The photograph of my grandmother remained there, smiling knowingly. I realized that every late night, every struggle, every sleepless hour had been worth it. Every tear and every doubt had built me into someone who could face the past, confront the people who had doubted her, and emerge stronger, not just for herself, but for the family she loved. The symbolic gift from my grandmother, the belief that dreams are stronger than fear, had been the invisible thread tying my life together. It had guided me when I faltered, reminded me of my worth when others questioned it, and anchored me when the storm of expectations and assumptions raged around me. Sitting by the window one evening, the city lights glowing like stars below, I allowed myself a quiet smile. I was no longer the girl who hid her ambitions, who trembled at rejection, or who quietly endured. I was a woman who had claimed her life, who had carved her path with courage, and who had taught the people around her that respect, accountability, and love must be earned, not demanded. And as I gazed at the night sky, I whispered to myself, a soft yet resolute affirmation: I am enough. I have always been enough. And from now on, I will live on my terms,